You know that thing where you tell yourself, I'll take care of my credit card debt later. And when you finally get around to it, it's like, how am I ever supposed to pay that off? Yeah, that. It all adds up. If you've got $10,000 or more in credit card or personal loan debt, National Debt Relief could help reduce the amount you owe and make your monthly payments a lot more manageable. With National Debt Relief, you get a team of experts who walk you through the numbers and build a plan that fits your budget. No awkward money lectures, no judgment. National Debt Relief has helped over 1 million people with their debt, and they could help you too. It's free, quick and easy. Just visit startndr.com today. If you've been putting off your debt, now's the chance to do something about it. Visit startndr.com today.
Trying to really figure out what was happening internally, and there was no literature coming from a person of color's perspective, or much less a queer person of color's perspective. So, years after really figuring myself out and coming out on the other end, I decided, I have all these journals that I started with, and it became this pile of journals that I had. And I remember looking back and going, oh my God, I'm not that person anymore. But I had all this knowledge that I gained over the last 6 years, and I wanted to do something with it other than just sit on it and do nothing.
Yeah.
And that's how this book was born. And yeah, it was something that I felt compelled to share with the world. And, I know that I'm not the only one going through those type of things. And I know there's other men or women or anybody that's dealing with family rejections or family traumas that they don't know how to process them. So it led me to want to create something for people like myself. It's literally the book that I wish I had.
Right.
When I was going through my own journey of trying to figure out what was happening. So
I went through something different, but it had similar contours. It was a lot of physical symptoms, based on things that had been going on in my life. I initially thought it was anxiety and depression. I tried all of that. And it wasn't until I started treating it like trauma that I got some unlocks. But it felt, as I was going through it, at times felt like life and death. I really felt like I was fighting for my life.
100%.
And I thought maybe in the future I'd look back and go, oh, it wasn't that bad. No, it was. It was. And I'm still afraid of it. I'm still afraid that something like that would come back. When you first went into therapy, how did, when you're in that vulnerable place, did something click right away? What was that? What were those first sessions like?
Well, the first session was, I was scared and not knowing what you're going into and not understanding what this dynamic means. I, at that point, had trust issues, obviously, that come with the years of trauma and the years of just going through the life that I had lived to that point. Trusting people was really hard, and opening up was even harder, right? So I remember specifically before I got to that point of sitting in that chair across from my therapist, I made it a point to look for someone that was also queer, that would not judge my lifestyle or the decisions I had made up to that point.
Right.
And that was a very important piece of the puzzle for me as a queer man. I wanted to make sure that the understanding and the empathy was there without the judgment and the criticism that I've faced my whole life up to that point. So, I got really lucky finding someone that was that person for me. And I remember sitting in that office that first day and just going in and going, okay, this is when I let all those walls down that I had carried for so long.
Right.
And I remember sitting there and being able to breathe for the first time in a very long time, because I told myself, it's okay. You're safe. You need to let your guard down if you really want to heal. If you really want to get to the bottom of what's going on, you really need to just let go. And that moment led to, having conversations with someone that didn't know me and could understand me in a deeper level. And for someone to look me in the eye and say, you know, you have PTSD or you have generational traumas, because at that point in my life, I was taking pills to go to sleep, pills to wake up, pills to function.
Yeah.
And my life was in the gutter, pretty much. It was my darkest. I was, you know, when people say you hit rock bottom, that was my rock bottom before that. And so having someone actually see me for the first time felt I felt seen, and it just felt nice. I felt welcomed for the first time in almost 40 years at that point. I was 37 when this happened. So, to see that and to feel that, it's really, it can be very overwhelming, but in a good way. Right.
How did they talk to you about trauma and explaining what that is and what those things were? Because I think that was my big unlock. And I understand what the situation was that brought that on, but it wasn't like an accident or something like a physical trauma where something happens. It was an unfolding of something.
I mean, when I went in, the reason I did go that route and sat at his office and said, okay, I needed a medical opinion.
Right.
I had gone to many, many doctors at that point, and my primary care wanted to give me Prozac. In my younger years, in my 20s, going into my 30s, I worked in pharmacy. So I knew what pills like Prozac do to people. Yeah. I knew what things like lithium and all those, you know, kind of hardcore medications tend to do to the body much more than mine. So my doctor prescribed me Prozac, and I left the doctor's office just feeling very discouraged because they wanted to dose me up instead of really listening to me.
Right.
So when I sat at that therapist office, I sat down and I said, look, I'm going to let my guard down, but you need to be honest with me. If you think I need to take Prozac, I will. But if you think I shouldn't, then please help me, because I don't want to go down that route and I don't know what else to do. It was pretty much help save me, right? So we did 2 sessions. After the second session, you know, we did assessments and all. He dug in with really personal, deep-rooted questions about my childhood. And after the second session, he's like, I don't believe that you have any of this things that you're dealing with, that you're taking pills for, the anxiety, depression, ADHD, you know, all the nice little cocktail that I was on. And he said, I believe what you're dealing with is generational trauma and PTSD. And I sat there and I was like, I don't understand. And honestly, I didn't, because, again, I just kept drowning and shedding feelings even further down by being able to take a pill just to function. Yeah. Right. So those words really hit home, and I didn't understand it. And I remember asking him, like, what does this mean? I don't get it. Why do I have PTSD? I've never been
in war.
Or for me, I connected PTSD to, like, you know, like you said, war, or like really hard, big traumas that can be very, you know,
violent.
Breaking.
Things that are violent. Or things like,
I mean, I had been at some, but I guess even looking back, you know, and going through those sessions, there was a lot of trauma that did happen to me as a kid by my father. But I didn't remember any of it because I had locked it away so far deep that I did not recall any of these situations. So when a therapist tells you you have these things and it's being presented to you that way, I remember going home and talking to my partner and going, I don't know what this means, but I really need to figure it out, what it means for me at least.
Yeah.
And I started doing my research. I always wanted to know why. I went into therapy with the question why. Yeah. That was my main top of mind question. For everything that was thrown at me, I always answered why. I wanted to get to the bottom of it. And so, you know, you start looking up terms like generational trauma, and especially for Hispanic communities, or I'm sorry, Latino communities, our grandparents, our parents, they're all bringing these traditional belief systems with them down the line. And for me, I was the firstborn to immigrant parents. So
Right.
they're bringing their belief system, their religious beliefs, or whatever it is that they're bringing with them from Mexico into the US, and trying to make a family dynamic work in a place where then I go to school and I see different dynamics being brought up by different people. You know, I had white friends, black friends, Asian friends, and everybody's running their lives a lot different than mine. And a lot of kids were being accepted. I wasn't at home. So it starts to create these battles within your own home where you're supposed to feel safe. And so you, as a kid, start to carry that generational
Right.
belief system, right? And that belief system becomes what is known as generational trauma, but they're just a set of limited beliefs brought on by your grandparents, parents, and then you start to carry all that within yourself. So,
Did you present as a feminine, or were you, like, I was called sissy a lot, and so I think I wasn't passing particularly well as a normal boy.
yeah, I mean, I don't think I
normal boy.
was either, looking back. You know, I like to play dressed up with my mom's clothes, and I just thought it was fun. You know, you're playing a game, but when you're a kid and you don't know the difference between straight or gay, or even the slur words that come with, right, with being gay, or it's just, you don't understand what those things mean, but you're just being yourself as authentically as possible, because
Yeah.
you are just a child and you're living in your purest form.
Right.
So I remember being a kid and just wanting to be creative. So for me, I've always been a creative type of heart and soul. And I always, you know, playing dress up, but I would play cars, but then I want to play Barbies. And it's just, I was very much, I guess the word now is androgyny, but that's kind of how I presented as a kid, was just very open and creative.
Yeah.
Right. And so when you live in a household with someone that has toxic machismo,
Yeah.
you start to lose a lot of that authenticity, and you start to bury a lot of that, because then you start being called names by your siblings or your dad or your uncles, and people around you start looking at you like, what is he doing?
Right.
And to them, it's not a game. To them, it's
Your future.
You're acting.
Yeah, that's who you are.
But they don't know how to deal with it, and or how to cater to it, right?
Yeah.
As a kid, instead of talking to me as a kid, they would come at me with violence, or angry slurs, or, you know, slap in the face, or, you know, and then it becomes more physical.
Yeah.
And then you slowly start to hide pieces of yourself that were very authentic to who you were as a kid or as a creative person.
Yeah, you talk about in the book about performing your life. Mm-hmm. What does that mean? Like, you're trying to be the kind of person that's accepted.
For me, it meant trying not to, you know, when you're a kid and you start getting hit back to back because you're just trying to be creative, and then you realize that what you're doing is wrong, in quotation marks, right? It becomes something that you become so aware of that you try to just hide all those parts of you and try to act as, I need to be a boy. And, you know, and so you start hiding all those parts of yourself. I remember, you know, cutting my hair really short and not wanting to have any sort of feminine look about myself. And I was, what, like 8?
Right.
you know?
You got
you
the
don't
message.
even understand.
Yeah, you get the message,
So
you know.
Yeah. Well, you get it beat into you. So
Right.
once people beat a certain thing into you, you kind of have to fall in line. And if you don't fall in line, things are going to get really bad.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what happened. And I remember growing up that way and being very guarded, very scared. You know, when my dad would get home, as I got older, I didn't want to be in the same room as him because I didn't know what his reactions would be if I said something, or if my hand went a certain way, or if I did a random gesture and he didn't like it. I knew that I was, you know, going to get disciplined. And so I started to be very cautious. And when you become cautious as a kid, it triggers your nervous system and it triggers your psyche, and you become kind of robotic in a way.
Yeah.
Right?
No, for sure.
Because you're just living in fear.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned the nervous system. When I was going through my thing, when I started treating it as a nervous system thing and not a brain thing,
yeah,
I started to find things that helped.
Oh my God. Well, they're both connected, right?
Right.
Your mind and your nervous system is connected as one. And I think a lot of spiritual work or mental health work, you know, there's a lot of spiritual bypassing happening in the world right now, and a lot of terms being thrown out like manifesting and all these things. And at the end of the day, we're all just living a life based on our limited beliefs, and it's based on how our nervous system is triggered by our thoughts. And not every single thought you think a day is true. As much as we want to say they are true or give them that power, most of them aren't.
Right.
And so when you start to have that awareness and you start to realize that your thoughts and your mind are just a program based on your past that is just running these little tapes, and that the deepest connection of who you are is your nervous system, right? And that nervous system is connected to your gut feeling in a way. Like when people say I have a gut feeling, that's your intuition, that's your nervous system. And you have to learn how to regulate that to really disconnect from those trauma triggers, because triggers are real and they're very much prominent in everyone's day to day, especially when you're trying to process traumas and or process your mental health and certain situations such as PTSD or generational traumas. You know, triggers can be very much ignited by certain things that people say or do, even just in your day to day.
Yeah. It sounds like when you first wanted to get to the bottom of this and see therapy, it sounds like you were a pretty good student. Like you read up and you did the writing. It seems like you approached it like a good student. Is that fair to say?
I think so. I mean, I feel like I did, honestly. I part of me just wanted to not die, right? And so
that could be the soundbite quote of this episode.
Yeah. You know,
I always pull a quote. You know, not dying would be nice if we could figure that out.
It would be nice. I was only 37 at that time. Honestly, I didn't want to die. And
I relate to that.
And I remember going to the doctor, and my doctor looked me in the eye and said, look, you're either going to have a stroke or you're going to have a heart attack. And we really need to figure out what's going on with you. And that just shook me, and it put me in a place of, I can die tomorrow, or I can end up half paralyzed. And that was going to be my future if I really didn't sit with myself and started to look inward. And at that time, I didn't have awareness of what looking inward meant. I just knew that I didn't want to die. And so when I did go to therapy and my therapist goes, you don't need any of those pills. We need to do this work. And he presented meditation, breath work, EMDR, which is all the tools that I share in my book now. I realized, I really need to figure this out, because there is hope and there is another way to have a different life than just be on fight or flight. And at that point, I had been on fight and flight for so long that it was tearing me apart from the inside out. I don't know if you've ever read the book, The Body Keeps Score.
Yeah, The Body Keeps the Score. Yeah.
Yeah, but
I have a highlighted version. I read that during this time, and it made a lot of sense to me.
100%. Yeah. And I agree. And that's what was happening to me. You know, my traumas were manifesting themselves through my heart.
Yeah.
And so, I had to take it as to me, I always thought about it as my job. But now that you're saying, you know, you were a student, I had to be a student to make sure that I had another chance.
Yeah. It seems like you didn't half-ass it. It seemed that once you decided to try to do this, you went all the way.
Well, I'm very stubborn.
There you go. How did the physical part manifest? You talk about your heart and your stuff. Like I would get tingles in my legs and tingles in my body. Like what did it feel like when you were at your worst?
It felt like I was drowning in my own body.
Yeah. I didn't feel safe in my own body for 2 years.
No. It wasn't just heart palpitations. It was anxiety attacks where I couldn't breathe. It was panic attacks with anxiety attacks mixed in sometimes. There was times that friends, partner, had to throw me in a cold shower just to trigger my nervous system, right? Because I was in such panic that I'd be thrown into showers with all my clothes on, cold showers, just to like snap out of it. And so when you wake up in cold sweats, or you wake up shaking, or you wake up screaming, or you wake up not knowing where you are, or having dreams that you're not waking up, those are all symptoms of the body trying to tell you something, and you have to listen. Most of us don't, and we shake it off and go, oh, I'll be fine. I just need to take a Xanax.
Right.
But the Xanax is only temporary. The Xanax is only going to calm you down for those, few hours. And what happens when it wears off? You have to take another Xanax because they're going to come back.
Yeah.
And so it becomes one of those things that it's scary sometimes. It was scary sometimes for me to even be home alone.
Yeah.
Was something that I was terrified of when my partner would go to work and I didn't have a friend around. I didn't want to be alone because I didn't know what my body was going to do. So
yeah. There was a period of my worst that I would have a different friend spend the night every night. Like
right?
For a
because
couple of weeks.
It's scary.
They did a shift. It was very it was like a little slumber party time, but they were there because I couldn't be by myself.
No.
It's a lot. Was there a moment early on in therapy where you felt you had an unlock where you're like, oh, like I'm on the right path here? That gave you hope early on?
My hope came from, I remember doing EMDR sessions, and those were very powerful.
Let's talk about that. That's rapid eye stuff.
100%. Yes.
My therapist at the time did a thing where there were things in my hands and little buzzer. Like, I think that was the EMDR.
Yeah.
I didn't have a huge breakthrough with it, but I thought it was really interesting. Talk about it.
So mine was integrated with a little bit of breath work that my therapist walked me through. So it was about kind of regulating your system and your breathing through breath work. You hold in for 4, then you breathe out for 4, and then you hold for 4. So it's like that, So I would do a lot of breath work with him just to regulate and calm my system down. And then we would go into the hand movements with the tapping.
Yeah.
So he would do the movement, I would do the tapping. And you kind of go into this meditative state. Meditative state means kind of clearing your mind and not really thinking of what do I have to do later, what's going on tomorrow. Like you kind of just go, okay, I'm in this moment. I need to focus on my breath and I just need to be in my body. Right. So for me, those sessions it felt silly at the time because I didn't understand what was happening. It was all very foo-foo or foreign or, you
There's
hear these
little
words.
things that you hold in your hands, some of it, or
and you go, well, how is this going to help?
Yeah, is this Scientology? What's happening?
Yeah. But the thing is, you really need to go into it with, I have no other option at this point. Right. So I might as well just try it and give in to it, right? And not judge it. So I needed to also, in that space of calming myself down and centering myself, not judge what was happening and not feel silly because I was in a safe space. So the movement would happen with the tap. I would tap my own, it was either legs or I would cross my arms and tap my shoulders.
Right.
And when you get into this state of you just kind of zone out into your own mind. And then he would have me close my eyes and put my head between my legs. And when that would happen, it was the abuse that I had gone through as a kid would come back and I would feel it and see it happening all over again. There was moments that I didn't remember happening that came back, right? When I was a kid, there was this one time that was just so prominent in one of those sessions, and it was me being silly and, trying to be cute. And my dad got so mad at me that he yanked me by my hair and he grabbed my hair and yanked me through the whole house by my hair, threw me in my room and beat me with a belt. And I did not remember that specific moment until I went into that session, because I had buried it so far deep that I didn't even know it had happened. Right. And when I came out and I realized what was going on, that was oh my God, this works, right? Like you go, oh crap.
But then you have to deal with it. Now
that?
you have this memory and you have to reckon with it.
100%. And when that happened, I remember talking to my therapist and going, what was that? Right. Yeah. And so we talked through it and we worked through a lot of it. The nice thing with my therapist is that he also gave me tools to take home. And those are the ones, I feel like there's a lot of self-help books out in the world, and mine is a memoir because I do share my story and the struggles that I went through as a kid in my 20s and my 30s, leading up to this point of me going into therapy and processing my own traumas. But at the end of each chapter, I share a tool that I learned. And I give simple how-to at home on how to do EMDR, breathwork, meditation, journaling, and all the tools that helped me. So for me, I don't consider myself my book a self-help. It's more of these are the tools you can utilize in between sessions, because those are the tools that I utilized in between sessions. Because what happens when you go to therapy and something like this does come up, right? And then you go home to the same triggers, the same space and the same everything, and you don't know what to do with yourself. I remember going home and crying because I felt that pain all over again.
Of course.
And then talking to my partner and telling him what I had gone through, and then talking to my best friend about it because I didn't know how else to get it out, right? So it becomes one of those things that processing traumas like that can be very heavy. And it was something that couldn't wait till the next session. It's what do I do now and for another week? Yeah, no, exactly. Before I can continue opening this box that I just opened. Yeah. And that left me so vulnerable. And that's also a part of why I decided to create a memoir, self-help, to share those tools, as those are the ones that can help you in between sessions and really help you regulate yourself once you get home. And when you start feeling a little bit anxious or sad because something traumatic came out, you can write about it, or you can meditate through it, or you can do shadow work about it. So
I want to talk about the different tools. Let's start with shadow work, because I don't know if I understand that in the same way that you write about it. So how do you describe it?
So shadow work to me is what happens when your authentic self starts to get buried by your surroundings, right? So say for me, for example, which, I always use, I was an artistic kid. I just wanted to be creative. Well, as I started growing up, I wasn't allowed to be artistic. I was too loud. I was too opinionated. I was too feminine. I was too this. I was too that. And once you start getting told how many things you're not supposed to be, you start bearing all those things onto your shadow side, and you are ashamed of them. And so you put them away, and it's kind of like a little bit of an onion, right? You start peeling away these versions of you that are authentic and they are who you truly just are. But then because your family told you can't be something, or because you're getting beat because you're acting a certain way, you start to put all those pieces of yourself into a dark space, and you kind of start to resent the people around you, right? Because you are now having to perform a version of what people want you to be. Yeah. And you start people pleasing, and then you start not acting as yourself, and you start living a life based on what other people think you should be living. And everything that you buried, that's your shadow. That's your shadow side. That's the shadow work that that you need to work through. And what happens when we become adults is that we see someone act flamboyant and we're triggered by that and we're annoyed. And then we sit there and we're like, oh, they're so annoying. Yeah. But instead of going, what about that is making me feel annoyed? And is it something that I'm triggered by because I can't be that?
Yeah, I'm not free.
Or, right, and we judge people based on our shadows. And so doing shadow work to me meant looking at those things that were happening in my surroundings, whether I was triggered by someone feminine or someone artistic or someone successful in their art, and looking inward and going, are they really bothering me? Are they pissing me off? Or is it something that I haven't dealt with that I buried for so long?
Yeah.
And then you start asking yourself those questions. Why is it bothering me? And then you keep answering, and you write it and you go, okay, I'm bothered because they're being themselves. Well, why is it? And you keep asking yourself questions until you get to the bottom of it. And then you realize that it's a part of you that you've buried or that you put away, that you've denied.
Yeah.
And a lot of the shadow work tends to give you a different perspective on things like that, and also make you realize, oh, I shouldn't hide that. That's just who I am. So maybe I should learn to embrace it instead of being mad about it or triggered by it, right? So to me, that's what shadow work meant. And it really helped me dig deeper. And, you start writing letters to your inner child. There's a lot of shadow work that has to do with inner child work and family traumas. And you really start digging deep and going, I've abandoned parts of I've abandoned my 5-year-old self because he was too loud, too much. Maybe it's time to embrace him and say, I'm sorry. And that can happen in writing. That can happen in meditation. That can really happen just in your own psyche, where you see yourself as a 5-year-old kid and you go, I am so sorry I abandoned you because you were too much or you were too loud or too feminine. I love you and I'm sorry that I abandoned you. It's time for me to protect you and let you know it's okay. And I need to take all that back. And it's okay to be feminine. It's okay to be whatever it is that we were ashamed of. It's okay. And you start to give yourself a little bit of grace and a little bit of empathy and compassion and go, oh, maybe it wasn't bad. Right? So
was there an outward expression when you started to forgive that part of yourself? Did you find yourself dressing differently or noticing the way you carried yourself?
So for me, it was more of my creative side had gotten buried all through school. I was in drama all through school because I needed escape. I was in art music classes when I was in elementary school. And then middle school through high school, I was in painting and arts and crafts. Like I was very artistic. But as I started growing up, my parents kept telling me no. And my dad is a mechanic, retired now, but he's a mechanic. My brother, who's 10 years older, grew up and followed the family profession, right? He was a mechanic. And I remember one time when I was like 6 or 7, and I just wanted to be in theater and act and wanting to be on stages and be seen in a different light and actually seen, right? Because you're growing up and you're told you're too much, you can't do all these things, but in stage you can be whoever you want.
Right.
And I remember wanting to be that so bad, and my mom going, I don't know what I'm going to do with this one. He has no interest in mechanics or cars. Right. What am I going to do with him? And that stuck with me. And it's something that I started to bury as I got older. When I was 10, I speak about this in my book. There was an agent that wanted to sign me for acting, and my parents said no. After high school, I was accepted to the Art Institute, and they said no again.
Wow.
And that was an application that my teacher put in for me because I was too scared to apply. But through all, and then after high school, I just completely buried that part of myself. It was non-existent. And I would poke at creative things here and there. And I ended up doing, I guess you would say, a career in makeup artistry just because I needed some sort of outlet. But as far as acting or painting or drawing, that was shut out. And I kind of moved into more cosmetic work, but at the same time, it was just so disconnected and so discombobulated in my own mind that when I remember doing all this work and, 4 years after healing my traumas, or actually it was 3 years after starting to heal my traumas and the work that I had been doing mentally, writing became my artistic expression that I had lost for so long. And I embraced it in a way that I started writing stories and like little things just to reignite that creative side of my brain. And that's how all this kind of came along as well, because I realized that I was hiding a part of myself for so long that I was so ashamed of. And it was always part of me, right?
Yeah,
so,
it's always there.
Yeah, so I might not, and I still draw sometimes, and I still do little things here and there to keep that going, but writing really took over that whole side of my brain and was very much, this is where I can use my storytelling, right? Yeah. I can use what I've learned on stage. I can use what I've learned through art classes and put it into a form that is telling a story and can probably help someone out if I express it correctly.
Talk to me about meditation, because I got into that during this period of time, and I still have a practice. What kind do you like to do? How often do you do it? What's your practice like?
Meditating, for me, it can be many forms, honestly. Sometimes if I'm having a really hard time centering myself in just silence and sitting with myself, I will cheat a little bit and go on YouTube and find a good
I love meditation. I love a good guided meditation.
They are the best.
2 meditation husbands who are very cute. They don't know it, but we're in a thing.
You'll have to share.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I'll share mine. And
one's a French guy in Portugal and one is a Canadian guy.
No, they're the best.
Yeah.
A guided meditation is the best when you're running at 100 per hour on 100 miles per hour in your brain and you can't shut it down. Go on YouTube, find a guided meditation, and to me, it helps more laying down than sitting up straight. That I can just kind of really relax into it. But I love a guided meditation, or I love a breathwork meditation, or sometimes it doesn't even have to be sitting in silence or having something guided in my ears. It can be just, I'm going to go for a walk and I'm going to put my headphones on and I'm going to listen to high frequency music.
What is high frequency music?
So if you go like on Apple Music, which is what I have, it's you can look up high frequency music, and it gives you a certain like the frequency that is played in meditation videos, right? So it's like a certain RPH. It's very much, it opens up your mind to be able to just center yourself. And so there's certain frequencies if you're looking for like a heart chakra or a third eye chakra, and stuff like that. But I love high frequency music, even if I'm just home cleaning. Yeah. I can put high frequency music on my TV and just kind of put myself in a meditative state where I'm not thinking of what happened yesterday or worrying about what's going to happen tomorrow. I'm just enjoying washing a dish, or I'm enjoying vacuuming. Yeah. And that to me can be meditative. It doesn't have to be this whole thing where you have to sit cross-legged on the floor with candles. Yeah. It can be, that's beautiful too. Yeah. But meditating can be anytime you want. Sometimes if I have an event or I'm doing something, and like even for example, before I got on this call with you, I sat here by myself for 5 minutes and I just quieted myself, cleared my mind. And that in itself is meditating. It doesn't have to be this long process, dragged out process. It can be 2 minutes. It can be 5. It can be an hour. It can be whatever you want. And that's, I think, something I love working with people and telling them, like, it doesn't have to be what you think it is. It can be catered to what you need. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, healing is not a singular line. It can be all over the place because we're all over the place sometimes, and that's okay. Yeah. Right?
I took a mindfulness-based stress reduction course at UCLA.
Oh, nice.
It's the Martin Seligman kind of school of thought, and he's sort of seen as like a positive psychology, kind of the godfather of it. Anyway, but this idea that ruminating on the past and worrying about the future is not a good thing, I think
it doesn't exist.
Yeah. This idea that I thought, well, I'm going to think my way out of these problems or process what happened. And the idea that like, oh no, that's a waste of time. It's a dead end. Don't do it. That was that mere concept was an unlock for me. And so I got a lot out of, cause I think going through certain challenges, I think I fought them to death afterwards. And you know what I mean? And I don't think it shed any light. I think it made me more unwell. So the idea of not thinking in the past or the future is,
oh my God.
Well,
you know what really hit for me in this whole journey in the last now 7 years, it has been that time is not real. And when you think that, people are like, wait, what do you mean it's not real? I have a watch. I'm looking at the time, you know.
Yeah.
The thing is that time is a man-made construct, right? But if you think in bigger terms, as far as if you're spiritual or religious, or, you know, I come from both worlds, right? I came up Catholic, went into Christianity. I've tried them all. I consider myself a very spiritual person these days. And I believe in the universe, source, God, and I interchange those words. And God can be whatever you like. There is only one, right? And but time doesn't exist in the construct of God or the universe, right? It's nonlinear in a way.
Yeah.
And before all this, I remember being in my 30s and going, you know, I need to have a career and this by the time I'm 40. And I remember going to therapy and unloading all this onto my therapist and saying, I need to have all these things completed by the time I'm 40. And him going, says who?
Yeah.
Says who? Who told you that timeline?
Right. Who are you competing with? Yeah.
And it was all in here, right? So we create these timelines, we create these constructs that, oh my God, we're running out of time and we're always in a hurry. But we don't have to be. That's our nervous system just being on flight or flight and not really knowing what to do with all this stuff. And stuff is just stuff. At the end of the day, when you realize that maybe in the bigger picture, you know, and especially now when people start talking about multiple universes or whatever, it's just time can be whatever you want it to be. It doesn't have to be this end of the world type of, I need to get this done because I'm running out of, no, you're not running out of time. You need to calm down. You need to center yourself. You need to breathe through it. Yeah. It will get done when the time is right. And you learn to live just a calmer state of mind, right? Especially with, like, we're talking about meditating and all these things. It's not about, nothing bugs me. I live in a very peaceful place. No, we're all human. We're all having a human experience, and things are going to trigger us or come up. It's how you respond to them. And it's what you do in those moments that you go, am I going to let this trigger my nervous system, or am I going to sit through it and, like, step back and go, oh, does this really matter? I have those questions a lot. You mentioned your partner. Do you have the same partner now that you've had? Yes.
They've been on the whole journey with you. What has that been like? God.
I had this conversation with him literally 2 days ago when I sat there and I told him, you know, Stephen, I was like, you've seen every version of me. And he has.
And your relationship has made it intact. That's a big deal.
Yes. I mean, no relationship is perfect, right? And we've had our ups and downs. What I can say, and I'm very proud of, is that we've never raised our voices to each other. We've never been physical with each other in altercations and stuff like that. We always said from the beginning, once it gets to that point, there's no respect, so might as not be together. But at the end of this month, on the 24th of May, we'll be 12 years together. And we got married in November.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah. But, you know, and it is crazy because I see pictures, and that's what brought up this whole conversation with him, is that I saw pictures of us, you know, 8 years ago, 10 years ago. And there's been so many iterations of who I am and who we are now. And, and he's seen all of them. And to me, he was someone that came into my life right at a time where I needed it the most. Mm-hmm. He was someone that saw something in me that I necessarily didn't see at that time because I was still drinking heavily and doing drugs and just not in a good space. But he saw through all that. And after a conversation a couple of days ago, he's like, I see the person now that I've always seen from the beginning.
Wow.
And I just give him so much credit, and I'm so grateful for him because he has seen me through all those iterations, but he was also the one that kind of saved me in a way when I was going through all those heart issues. He was very much there and wanted me to figure it out and helped me through that process, right? Of figuring out my mental health, that he even started going to therapy and figuring out his own childhood traumas or whatever the things may be. And so we, at that time, before I started therapy, we almost didn't make it. And that's just the honest truth, because I was in such a roller coaster.
Of course.
Disaster. And he was just at a limit. So we almost didn't make it, but, we did because he saw me put in the effort. And when he saw me really going through the motions of figuring myself out, it motivated him to do the same. And we both have grown together in a mental health way, if you would call it that, or a spiritual way, because we share our knowledge with each other. I've learned a lot in my last 7 years, and I consider him my first student when it comes to teaching or, spiritual work that I do now or workshops. He was my first student, and I helped him through a lot, but he helped me through a lot as well. So yeah,
I think that's awesome. You talk about different religions that you explored. Mormonism was one of them. I was raised Mormon. So I was like, he went to Salt Lake and did the Mormon thing for a while.
Yeah, I was in Salt Lake for 4 years. We got there right before COVID happened. And I met a lot of amazing people. And I learned a lot because at that time, I've always had a feeling that there was something bigger than myself. I always knew that there was a God, but every religion I've ever gone to has told me the same thing, right? You don't fit in our book.
Yeah.
Our belief systems, you're not allowed.
Yeah,
right?
There's something wrong with you.
There's something wrong with you, or you're going to go to hell. And it just became a repetitive situation. Anytime I tried to find God, I was casted out in some form or another, or people, right? And just even going to Utah and talking to Mormons or ex-Mormons and seeing what they were going through really was very enlightening. And again, I'm a why person. I want to know why. And I've always just been very nosy and trying to learn as much as I could.
Right.
So I would ask a lot of questions if it was okay with them, obviously. And it was, and we became friends and they've opened up. But it was really interesting to see their perspective on how they see God, or how they were casted out of their families and friends because they decided to live authentically.
Yeah.
And all that was happening at the same time that I was trying to figure out who I was, because I lost any part of me that was authentic, getting to the point of starting therapy and figuring out my journey, that I started to ask questions to everyone around me. And at that time, ex-Mormons were very much prominent in my life. So I started asking questions because I wanted to know how they felt about it and what their perspective was, because we're all living lives based off of perspective, right? But everyone has a different perspective. And I really wanted to understand how they were getting through it if they didn't have community.
Yeah.
Right. And as queer people, the great thing that we do have is that we have the superpower to create our community.
Yeah.
We have the superpower to find people like ourselves and create those spaces that are safe. And we can have those conversations and feel seen. So it was very helpful. And it was a very beautiful time because I learned a lot about something bigger than ourselves, right? And community is built on, I believe, God in a way, because we're all looking for God, right? But then we're all told not to go into these spaces. So then we create our own community and are able to have these conversations based around God without the religion part of the, so yeah, it was a very interesting and fun time and great people. And it was just lovely.
Mormons are really cool and nice. I love them.
Yes, you learn a lot.
Yeah. So you're going to hell. What otherwise it's good.
They're like, yeah, right. Girl.
Yeah, and they like to dance, and they're very musical. They're like Osmonds, which are
I love it.
You can't get enough Osmonds.
No.
I want to talk to you about the idea of healing in general. And the reason I bring it up is I've written my first play recently, and it's very personal to me, and it deals with it's a comedy, but it deals with shame. It's shame around sex. Masculinity, pursuing being authentic versus doing what you think will fit you in, pursuing your dreams rather than going for financial security, all of these things. And a lot of times when I talk about it with people, I cry. Like I'm crying in restaurants, like, and I'm not mad at it, but it's like, this doesn't feel like healing to me. You know what I mean? It feels like these things are right there. And and it's more of an uncovering of like, oh, wow. I don't know. It's a sort of a reckoning with these ideas. And I think of the three men in this play, three different men, and I could cry just thinking about them. And I created them.
Yeah.
So, you have a look on your face like my therapist across the couch from me. Like you're giving a really good face like that.
It's the glasses.
No, it's very like, but it's like, I've heard this before. This is interesting and new, but I recognize this. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I do. And the thing is, healing to me at least means radical acceptance of all of those things.
Yes.
Right. It becomes a place where we've lost so many parts of ourselves because we are trying to people please or fit in or whatever the case is, that's where the shame and the hiding and all those things start to happen because we are trying to please the masses.
Yeah.
And radical acceptance to me means, being unapologetically yourself and realizing that maybe we're not the main character in everyone's story because everyone's the main character in their own story, right? And realizing that most of them don't even care what you're doing. And so when you take all that away and you go, okay, I am all these things and it's okay to be all those things. Healing doesn't mean to me, oh, I've healed this trauma and I'm better now. No, it means I'm owning that trauma. I'm owning the crap that happened to me. I had a piece and part of it, right? As a kid, obviously, I was a product of my environment, and the things that happened to me were out of my control because I was a kid.
Right.
But I also internalized a lot, which led me to create a life that was caused by my own self-hatred and self-devaluation and and it becomes a place where I allowed people to treat me a certain way or talk down to me in a certain way. So for me, healing means owning yourself and creating those boundaries and creating a space for yourself where it's like, the thing that has really allowed me to heal and to kind of exist with everyone in my reality right now has been no one's above anyone and no one's below anyone. We're all the same. Yeah. And we're all just trying to figure this out. And this life is not easy. And for a lot of us, it's not. And it's okay. And it's not supposed to be easy. We're supposed to be learning, right? Yeah. So if you put that concept into your mind and you go, okay, so if we're all the same and no one's above me, so then all those pedestals go away.
Yeah.
And then no one's below me. So you're not looking at the person on the street and going, ugh, you're gross or whatever. You go, oh my God, we are the same. So I'm going to help you.
Yeah.
Right. Or I'm going to give you whatever I can. And once you kind of just level the grounds with everyone and you just have full acceptance that we're all just trying to do the best that we can, you realize that owning who you are is okay.
Yeah.
And having self-compassion and empathy is part of healing. And the thing is that most of us, when we're going through those processes of trying to heal our traumas or anxieties or whatever, we're so hard on ourselves.
Yeah.
We are the meanest people to ourselves, right? Yeah. We're like, oh, I can't believe I'm doing that again. Just let it happen. We're allowed to have feelings. We're, even now where I'm at in my life, there's days I get upset. There's things that upset me. There's, irritances that happen in my life. But I allow myself to feel that at that moment and go, is it really worth it though?
Yeah.
Or is it not? But I've also learned to create boundaries with people, that used to maybe talk to me in a certain manner that was disrespectful or devaluing. And I've had conversations where that's not going to happen anymore, because we need to have equal respect, equal love, equal everything. Yeah. And if we don't have that, then we don't have a relationship, and that's okay too. So it's about giving yourself grace through all the hardships that we think we're going through, and going, they're all okay and they're all fine, but I matter too.
Yeah.
And I need to value me more. And when you start to value yourself, you start to feel different. You feel confident. You feel good in your skin. You feel like you can do anything. And that is healing in a way, right? Because you're kind of owning who you are. And it doesn't have to be mean or rude, but it can be unapologetically owning who you are, with the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Because we're both, right? And both can exist at the same time. So it's about compassion and empathy.
Yeah.
And it's all the good things mixed together in one, and just allowing yourself to be in a better space with you at the end of the day. Because that's the only relationship that matters, should be the one that we have with ourselves.
I think that's
and
beautiful.
Then people will see that.
Yeah. No, these themes are very resonant for me right now because of this project. Yeah. I have one more question for you, but first tell people how they can find the book, where they can find you, and all the different things that you do.
Yes. So I am on Instagram. It's peterj.cervantes, Cervantes. That is my handle on Instagram. That is the only social media I have. My website is peterjcervantes.com. You can find The Road Back to Me on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, anywhere you get your books, even local libraries. I know I've had a lot of people reach out to me on Instagram and say, does my local bookstore carry your book? They can order it because it is available through Ingram and all the distributors that get books to those stores. So, that's where I'm at.
Right on. Here's my final question. What does it mean to you to have the book out in the world?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I was so excited last year when I got signed and, got the publishing deal, and you get so caught up in the excitement of this is happening. Oh my God.
My life is going to change.
But you don't realize how much of yourself is going out into the world until it is out. So to be honest, and I want to be 100% transparent with you, it came out in January, and I kind of hermited in February, because I kind of had a freak out moment within myself.
Interesting.
Right? Again, things happen, and I allowed myself to have that moment and go, okay, maybe I just need this time to really figure out what's going on. I don't think I was prepared mentally for having so much of myself out there in that way. I've always been very private in a way, and I really don't share much on socials and stuff like that. So having my childhood and the traumas and the addictions and the drinking and all the dark parts of myself out in the world so vulnerable really shook me a little bit and put me in a place of like, what did I just do?
Right.
But then when I sat with it, and I had to sit with it, I remember I sat with it for about a week, and I was just like, okay, what now? And I realized that it had nothing to do with me. And it still doesn't have anything to do with me. All those parts of myself that I share in this book are no longer here.
Right.
They're gone, right? So I'm able to have conversations about it. I'm able to talk to people about it. And I have no more emotional connection because I have healed those parts of myself. And to me, it's God or the universe using my story to share it to the world and let people know you're not the only one. And the beautiful thing that came out on the other side of that reflective time was the amount of DMs and messages from strangers that I didn't know reaching out to me on Instagram and saying, thank you for writing that. I see a lot of myself in it. And that was the most rewarding piece that I could have asked for. Is the most beautiful gift, honestly. And even now that I do workshops and speaking engagements, I have people come up to me and just thank me and hug me, and they just want a hug. And you can't buy that anywhere. You can't, it's a feeling of, wow, I almost died perspective wise. And now I'm helping someone find their second chance. And that is such a beautiful feeling that it makes it all worth it. And I don't care what's out there. I will continue to share every single part of me moving forward because it's making a difference in people that I'm just now meeting. And that is the most beautiful gift I could have asked for. And yeah, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. And I just love connecting with people in a deeper level than just surface and really getting to know people. We're learning to love each other and connect through our hardships. And that's really hard to do, but it's also a very beautiful place to be. So.
Yeah. What a beautiful note to end on it. Congratulations on the book, The Road Back to Me.
Thank you so much.
Peter, it's been a pleasure talking to you.
Pleasure talking to you.
I hope our paths cross in person sometime. That would be wonderful.
100%.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks again to Peter J. Cervantes. Pick up his book, The Road Back to Me, and you'll be glad you did. All right, so this happened. I can't say a lot about this thing that happened, but I will tell you that I got a text from my dance agent on 2 Thursdays ago in the afternoon saying that I was booked on a certain project if I wanted to do it. It was a short-term project, and I knew the name of the choreographer, and I was very excited, like not even an audition. And so I said yes. I was able to work it out with my work, which was very nice of them. And so I embarked on this project, but the first day of it was rehearsals, and the movement was doable. I could do it. It wasn't too difficult or too technical, but we kept running it over and over. And I was like, post-COVID, my stamina, I don't know if I took a hit during COVID or what, but like sometimes in really long dance classes, I'll struggle with breathing. And like, that's what was happening here. And I was like, oh, please don't fire me. Please let me get through this. And I did, and I ended up shooting it, and it was fine. It was fun, and I will share the adventure with you later. It's very exciting, and I will, but there was a moment there where I thought, oh my God, what have I gotten into? And I got in there, and I thought I was going to be the old guy in the background because I'm in the mature category. It was all dancers in their 20s and 30s and me. So there you go. Living the dream. But I'll tell you more about it later. I survived. It went well. And in a way, it was a dream come true, actually. It really was. So I'll tell you more about it when I can. That's enough for this week. I want to give a shout out to Oscar Rosario for mixing my episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for placement music. Catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye.